occasionally somebody will call me and they're kind of on the fence. Maybe they've been appointed a public defender. They don't want to spend the money on a private attorney. And they just ask me, why do I need you? Why do I need an attorney? Hello, my name is Andrew Buddha. I'm a DUI attorney practicing in the Tampa Bay area with offices in Tampa and Orlando. So what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to answer that question today. Well, one of the biggest differences between whether you hire an attorney or not is really not even that, but number one, can you afford an attorney, or can you try to afford an attorney, or should you just stick with the public defender's office? Now, what the public defender's office is there for is for people who don't have enough money to hire a private attorney, and they're appointed an attorney based on an affidavit that they have to do, which they swear to is true. And it just lists their financial assets, how much money they make, and that determines whether or not you qualify to even have a public defender or not. So let's assume for a moment that maybe you do qualify for a public defender and you're considering whether or not you should try to find the money, sell some stuff, get a loan, or maybe get some family or friends to help you to hire a private attorney. So the first thing you probably are wondering and asking yourself is that, what is the difference between a public defender and a private attorney? A lot of times people call and they make a joke. They say, public pretenders, or they'll tell me they want a real lawyer. Let me just stop you right there. Let me just be really clear. A public defender is a real attorney. They've passed the bar just like I have, just like every other practicing DUI attorney in the state. There's really two main differences that I tell people for the public defender's office or private attorney. Number one is that regardless of its DUI or a first-degree murder, a public defender has many, many, many cases. There are not enough public defenders for cases, and they're controlled how many cases they are by basically how many people are arrested and need public defender services. So I tell my clients all the time that I have an employee that works for me. He's a full-time attorney. Him and I typically have a caseload between the two of us between 50 and 100 cases. So you think when we're very busy, we each have 50 cases that we work on. And that would be a lot of cases for us to work on. Public defenders each have hundreds of cases, if not thousands in some counties. Now, let me just go ahead and tell you this, is that public defenders, because of that high caseload, they're not a lot of times able to spend the amount of time and give your case the attention that it may need. Or maybe they look at it and they thoroughly look at everything, but because of the speed, just the speed that they have to look at things, they might miss something. Now, that's not to say they're going to or they're not going to be as thorough as possible, but you just think about how many cases they have. And, if that's really what you want to do is to have somebody that has that many cases, no matter how good of an attorney they may be, being responsible for potentially your freedom, because again, for a DUI, a first-time DUI could potentially be going to jail for 6 months or 9 months as a maximum. The second thing that I tell people to be wary of is in the public defender's office, typically, and this is going to be intuitive, it's going to make perfect sense, is that most of the time you start as a public defender in misdemeanor courts. So what is a DUI? It's a misdemeanor. So that means that a lot of times you're going to have a less experienced attorney, right? You're going to have an attorney that maybe just graduated law school, just passed the bar, and their first job is that of a public defender. Again, that doesn't mean that they're not a good attorney, that they're not smart, because they're qualified. It just means that they don't have the experience that is needed to maybe know little things that could help you with your case to make a big difference in the ultimate outcome or resolution. But that's not to say that I haven't seen public defenders that do a really great job, but it's just something to consider. Another thing is communication. One of the biggest reasons that clients will ultimately hire me is because they call me and they're frustrated because they've tried to get a hold of their public defender. They can't reach them. And just do the simple math. If you have 500 cases and you have 500 clients and they're all trying to get a hold of their public defender, you divide that by 40 hours, they wouldn't have anything they wouldn't be able to do anything other than call their clients 24 hours a day. for that matter. So communication is very difficult, and I understand that when you are faced with a DUI and the consequences of potentially losing your freedom, going to jail, it's really important to be able to have communication with your lawyer, whether that be through an email, through a phone call. Probably every single one of my clients has my personal cell phone number, and some take advantage of that, but for the most part, I'm available if you need me, 24/7. If it's an emergency, I'm there, and I'm gonna give you a quick response, unless obviously there's something that comes up. But just the feeling of knowing that, if you have a question or concern or an emergency, that your attorney's going to be there is a huge difference between a public defender and a private attorney. The next thing that I think is important to why you should hire a private attorney is the whole DMV. Whether you have a public defender or not, there's two aspects to every single DUI, and most people take this for granted. There's the criminal part, but then there's the equally as important part that you have to deal with, the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, and that's the suspension of your driver's license and just all the different ramifications and options. I'm not going to get into those now, but it's very technical, and there's time constraints, and there's procedures that you have to follow, and you have to do everything in order correctly, and if you don't, you're going to suffer the consequences of that. And not being able to drive, not being able to get any sort of driver's license, that alone could be worth the price of admission for hiring an attorney. The other reason I would say that it's important to hire an attorney is a DUI is one of the most technical kind of cases in law. As criminally speaking, you have all the little minor things that happen, but you have scientific evidence. You have when they have their pen and they make you follow the pen with your eyes. That's very scientific. That's very technical. What they do, they're looking for what's called involuntary movements of the eye. They have to do a lot of training to be able to be experts in that field. So you need a DUI attorney who is going to be, very knowledgeable in that specific part of the case, because it's important. That's one of the things. I'm sure if you're sitting here watching this video and you were recently arrested for DUI, you're like, oh yeah, they did look at my eyes. I just thought they wanted to see if they're bloodshot red and watery. No, it's more to it than that. The other things is, if you've watched my video on what they have to do to prove a DUI, well, there's two things. There's that your normal faculties were impaired, or that you blew a .08. Well, let's talk about normal faculties first. A private attorney is going to be able to know and spend time, watch the videos, take pages of notes on how you do, because those things are very important for, number one, negotiations to help you get the best possible deal. And then once that deal is on the table, to help you create a trial strategy, because you might want to take your case to trial, and you have to be prepared, and you have to do a very thorough investigation from a defense perspective on the DUI case to help you form that defense that you're going to want to take with you to trial. And then the other way that they prove the DUI, the breathalyzer, over the .08, well, those are machines. Machines break down, and you have to be knowledgeable about the records keeping of the state of Florida and the different department that arrested you, and different interferences that could have taken place to make that machine ultimately break down. Because here's the fact. This isn't an opinion. This is a fact. All machines break down. All of them. I don't care if it's, your computer or it's the International Space Station. Every machine is eventually going to break down. So in order to prevent machines from breaking down, there has to be maintenance. And the breathalyzer machines, they go through maintenance. And those are things that you want your attorney to be aware of. And then another reason, a very basic reason that you want to hire an attorney, is attorneys have relationships with prosecutors. Attorneys are going to know how judges act. Every single judge is going to be different. Now, they're all going to follow the same law, but as far as little intricacies about how they like to do things procedurally, amount of probation, whether or not your probation can automatically terminate, if you can terminate at the halfway point, if you can buy out some of your community service hours, if you can buy them all out, if your traffic citation is going to be, if you have to pay for it, or if it's going to be just thrown out and dismissed. Those are little things that I've earned my knowledge through experience. And that is a big reason why you want to hire the right attorney if you're going to do it, because experience and that knowledge is, in my opinion, it's priceless. Your freedom's on the line, and obviously you want the best deal possible, or ultimately, obviously the best case scenario would be your case to be dismissed. But that knowledge, I've earned that knowledge. I've earned that experience as a prosecutor. I spent years and years and years as a prosecutor learning how they do things. And I've done this for years and years and years on this side, learning how to do it from the defense perspective. And I've earned my knowledge. I've earned the trust of my clients, because it is not just as easy as going in there and saying, okay, judge, we're here, give us a good deal. No, you have to find the reasons in the evidence to get the best deal for your clients. So I rambled on a little bit there, but it is something that I think you should hire an attorney. And let me just tell you, it's not going to be, it's not going to be cheap. You're not going to get away from a DUI without having to pay some money, whether you go with a public defender or not, because DUIs are expensive. Any time you're dealing with the criminal justice system, there's going to be expenses. And that's another benefit of having somebody that can tell you what those expenses are going to be, whether it's from having to do a DUI school or just knowing what the court costs and different fees are associated with your DUI could potentially be. But those are just a few of the many reasons why you should hire an attorney. Just think about it like this, is that whatever it is that you do, I'm sure you're good at it. And that could be anything from, putting a roof on a house to doing brain surgery. You wouldn't expect somebody that doesn't do that every single day to be able to step in and do what you do. That's the same thing, but a lot of people get hung up on, well, if I can't afford it, the court's going to appoint me a free one, or, what if I pay you and you don't get me the best result? Well, to answer that question, a lot of times that can happen. And I tell people all the time during initial free consultations is I can't guarantee you anything. I don't know the evidence that the state attorney has against you. For that matter, if I did make any kind of guarantees, I'm not looking out for your best interest, which is my job as your attorney. I'm going to be a salesman at that point. I'm just going to try to get you to give me your money, and then I'm going to, who knows, run or do whatever. And so I will never give you a guarantee. I will just guarantee you, that I will work the hardest that I can on your case and give it all my attention and all my firm's resources. And then I also will guarantee you that what the worst case scenario could be. And then, obviously the case falls somewhere in between. Most of the time for a first time DUI, it's going to be on the closer to the, no jail side, hopefully, or reduction to potentially a reckless driving. But that's what you're doing when you're hiring an attorney, because you're finding someone that knows what they're doing, is going to be able to look at your case from the perspective of a former prosecutor, from a current defense attorney, and is going to be able to apply all that knowledge, all that experience that I've gained along the way to help you make the best decisions, to lead you to make those best decisions, and present all the options with you, and do everything in my power to get you the best result for your case, whatever that may be. So thanks for watching the video. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out.